Everyone, and welcome to another great and grand venture in the Conversations of Horror universe. I want to thank you all for joining me. My name is Kevin L. Powers. I'm the festival director and co-program director for Something Wicked Film Festival and Events, and I have a great show for you today. Because today I have a special guest on the show who will help me discuss the amazing vampire film, Dracula Untold. And with me today is my guest, Sonia Thompson. Thank you, Sonia, for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me on. I enjoy doing this thing.
And the thing is, everyone who listens to the show knows that vampire films aren't really my type of genre, but Dracula Untold is actually one I really enjoyed. So we're just going to jump right into this one because I want to actually talk about this movie. Sonia, because I love knowing this about every person who I have on the show, what was your impression of seeing this film for the first time?
Well, I was flipping through and came across it and I was like, Dracula Untold. And I was like, oh my God, this is freaking amazing. I'm surprised it didn't have more promotion about it, more marketing, because I mean, it is a really darn good film.
Yeah.
Very
well
done.
I think one of the reasons why is because the star Luke Evans is still an up and coming actor. He's done a lot of smaller things, and of course, even though this is a Universal film, vampire films haven't really come back to audiences' favor as of yet. But one of the great things about this film, and I'm not a big vampire film, is that I absolutely love Luke Evans, and I actually love a lot of the stuff that he's done. I think he's an amazing actor, which is what drove me to see this film for the very first time.
Yeah. Well, when I saw that Luke was in it, because I mean, I loved him on The Hobbit, and I think he even did, I think he did like Three Musketeers, which is a TV show I had recently watched. And I was like, oh my God, this is really cool. I mean, I really like him a lot. He did a fantastic job. So it was really cool.
Well, well, one of the things I really enjoyed about the film is the fact that it wasn't your typical Dracula story. They kind of brought it into, even though it's still a period film, they kind of brought it into modern day ideals, I actually love the way he became a vampire, and of course, how it actually drove into his character in the film. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I really liked the way that it all went about. I liked the way that when he went into the cave and when it came down to what was kind of his desperation of saving his village, his town, and he felt like he had no other choice. And so he did this to have all the strength. And he really did try to not drink any blood, because he didn't want to stay like that. He really didn't. But the effects they did, upon how, all of a sudden he tried to hold the silver in his hand and it burned him. And, I mean, it was just, I just really liked the way they did it. I really liked the effects in it. The effects in the movie were amazing. I liked the way they incorporated the bats because the bats were part of him.
Yeah.
He had control over all the bats and what, he wanted them to do and the way he moved. I mean, it was so freaking cool the way he moved through the woods so quickly. It was like he was a whole bunch of bats and then all of a sudden he swirled around and then he was whole again. It was really neat how they did everything. I really liked it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that influenced the type of action in this film was definitely the underworld films, as it took a very dark look, but it was a very action-packed film. Probably more so action than it was horror. Maybe that's why I like it so much. Uh, because with the exception of this film, I tend to gravitate towards vampire films that are more entertaining and less of the scary type because I don't really find vampires scary. I also like the more traditional ones. So like, Fright Night's one of my favorite of all time, and
Yeah.
Nosferatu, the original version, the original silent film. Well, I actually like the remake too with Klaus Kinski. But the more modern day takes of Dracula, I don't tend to like as much. Maybe because, and I know this is sacrilegious to our listeners, that I'm not a very big fan of the book. I read the book when I was young, and I just didn't take to the book all that much. But that's me. That's just me. I'm not sure about you and how much you like Dracula films, and or if you've read the Dracula book or not.
I've read the Dracula book, and I liked it pretty well. But I like vampires, so that makes a difference. But I try to check out a lot of the different types of Dracula films here and there over the years. And this one, I just really like the way they did it because the storyline flowed very well.
Hmm.
And yeah, they didn't waste no time about getting to the action stuff.
No.
And they give some kind of like factual, well, somewhat factual information about how, the young boys were taken to become the army and all, a lot of that stuff is based on some factual type stuff because they would take the young men and I think it was the Turks or whatever, would take them and so they could train them for their armies.
Hmm.
Uh, and so that was incorporated in this. And you know, all the actor. I mean, there's a lot of strong actors in this film as well. And I really, really like the way, he just got down to it,
Yeah.
and he just he was ready to defend his home, his people. And I think one of his one of the guys had said, he was talking about, he wanted to defeat him in 3 days
Hmm.
because that's what he had was 3 days. And if he didn't drink any blood in 3 days, then he didn't become Dracula. He didn't take over this vampire. He didn't get to stay a vampire. And I thought it was kind of funny when one of his compadres says, "Well, do it in 2 days and really impress us." So there's a few little lines in there like that really made me giggle a little bit because I was like, yeah, if he only knew, he probably can. But I no, I liked it. I liked it a lot.
I think that Luke Evans actually took to the character very well, and unfortunately, there won't be a sequel anytime soon that we know of. But I think he really brought a lot to the character, and it would have been really interesting to see what he would have done if there had been a sequel, and they had actually done it in the modern day times as this film was had its epilogue.
It's very possible that the way they ended it, with him being sort of in modern day times, and everything right there at the end, that they could possibly do a second one and do something. But just leaving it as it was fine. It's one of those movies that doesn't have to have a sequel, because of the way they ended it, and I don't want to give the ending away. It's like, I'm just like, oh my God, I probably already have a little bit,
Well,
but
I'm
I
sure
like the way it ended.
I'm sure that people listening have, if they haven't already seen Dracula Untold, they might think they're a little bit familiar with the story, but this movie does take a lot of liberties with the Dracula story, which is actually what makes it more exciting and much more interesting than some of your more standard Dracula tales that have been done. And there are a lot of films being done right now around the Dracula myth in the book.
Mm-hmm. There are. I mean, but there was, what I thought was cool though is how he took out all those. I'm sorry, my phone. I'm going to apologize on this recording. My phone rang and somebody just left me a voicemail message and it just made noise and I apologize. But I love the way he took out so many men by himself
Mm.
because he was told, I have the power. You'll have the power of 20 men or whatever. And he was able to just go down there and just take out all these people. But it was unfortunate how some of the stuff came about with his son and
Mhm.
all that, and his wife. But I just thought it was so cool. I mean, it was just like, dude, he's kicking butt here. And I mean, this is a movie. If you enjoy seeing somebody kick butt, then he kicks butt.
Like I said, and those underworld influences are very prevalent in the movie. Uh, but speaking of another actor I really enjoyed seeing this film and not given enough screen time was Charles Dance, who kind of gives him the vampire powers at the beginning and turns him into Dracula, or the vampire as we know him, and of course pops up at the very end of the film again. I
Hmm.
absolutely love the Charles Dance. I've loved him in his British films and Alien 3 and freaking Last Action Hero. I just I'm a huge fan of Charles Dance, and it was very interesting to see him in this film. I'm not sure if you're familiar with who Charles Dance is or not.
Uh, Not really. I'm not very familiar with him, but I do know which character you're speaking of, and that was pretty. He did a great job. He really did. So I like Dominic Cooper too, that played the preacher,
Yeah, yeah.
and that was a good role. Uh, I thought it was kind of weird though how that kind of went down, like how he was suspicious of Dracula, because it didn't give anything leading up to why he was suspicious. You
Okay.
know, I thought there could have been a little bit more play on that, and maybe there was because we both know how movies get edited down. We've both been in movies that got edited down, and some of the good parts are not there, and you're like, dude, that would have elevated the story, you know. Um, but I just think that it just felt like it just seemed kind of weird and awkward with the way how that was done because he's in that, you know, he's hiding in the dark in the shadows a little bit, but he's not being suspicious enough where the preacher should be suspicious of him.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, the preacher was just, he just kind of like went right into it and was like watching him. And then all of a sudden knew who he was, that he was, you know, some creature. And so that was something that kind of bothered me a little bit was
Hmm.
that, you know, he just could have, it, that happened too quickly.
Uh, you know what? It does feel like now that you pointed out, it does feel like maybe there was something cut out where they could have explained that more, how his character gets to that point. But bringing up Underworld again, they probably were cutting out the stuff to get to the action.
Probably so. Probably so. But it is an action packed movie, you know, and I get bored easy in some movies. And so I like the way that it kept, you know,
You get
that it
bored.
kept kind of keeping.
So,
Yeah, I get bored with some movies.
that's interesting that you said. So, do you enjoy these faster type vampire films, or do you prefer something more like She Walks Home Alone at Night, where it's a very slow, methodical vampire film?
No, I mean, you know, those are good and all because I mean, you're like, you really get into it a little bit more and you can keep up a little bit more. But I am one of those, I mean, it's like I like the faster pace because I like the action. And, you know, yeah, I want a storyline. I want to be able to follow the storyline. I want there to be a good flow, but I like the action. I like it being fast paced so I can, I don't know, my brain's like, oh yeah, yeah, what's next? What's next? You know, and, you know, I can't, when it's going too slow, I'm like, oh, are they ever going to get there? Um, okay, well, that just happened. All right. Come on, let's get to the good stuff, you know? so, so that's, I really like this one because and it was so cool because all of a sudden when you think that he has won, you know, and he's defeated enough my phone started ringing again. I apologize. I did not cut it off. Um, but, um, but anyway, um, yeah, it was like just when you thought that he had won the fight or he was, you know, things were going to be okay. Then
Mhm.
all of a sudden there was a stone thrown in and, you know, his son and them are captured, you know, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh crap, you know, why did that just happen? I mean, give him a little bit of breathing room here, you know, but it still went well with the pace. And it was one of those twists that, you know, was actually good because it was expected, but not expected so early. And, and he was just, you know, he was able to jump in and do what he needed to do. And that was really cool. So, um, But I overall, I think I highly recommend the movie.
Okay.
And I know that it's going to be a good hit if everybody finds out about it. I mean, I think it just a Netflix original or not. I didn't pay attention to that.
It was a theatrical film, but it didn't do well theatrically. It did okay. Not enough to warrant a sequel of any type.
Mm-hmm.
So which is unfortunate because like I said, I would have loved to have seen a sequel. But like I said, there's a lot of Dracula films being made right now, and none of them are doing well. You had the Last Voyage of the Demeter, which didn't do well, and then of course you had Renfield, which didn't do well. But both of those movies were really good. So I just think that a lot of audiences just don't want to see Dracula, and which is a shame because these are some, and like I said, I'm not a Dracula fan, yet I just mentioned three films within the last 5 to 10 years that were actually really good. And they take a different take on Dracula, all three of them. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those things, but I really want to, for people who have not seen this film, and I do want people to see this film if you haven't already seen it because it is a good film. I want you to let us know one of your takeaways with the film for our audience. What would you want them to get out of this film, or what do you think is, because this is I've been avoiding saying too much about the film for those who may not have seen it already.
I know, and I've tried not to say too much either, and then I catch myself saying certain things. But know that it's a few things in the film might not quite make sense, but at the same time, it's just very subtle things. But overall, take the time, watch it. I think you'll enjoy it because it is a good twist on Dracula. It's not your typical Dracula film, and it really gives you a different perspective as to how he became Dracula and how it all went down. And, and it's not him sleeping in the basement in a coffin or anything like that. I mean, that never happens in this. Never do you see that happen. It's more of a realistic approach to Dracula and his home life with his wife and his son, and yes, it's the 3 days that he's becoming a vampire. Where is he going to drink the blood or not drink the blood? And it's really cool when he does drink the blood, but it's got some good twists and turns in it, and there's a lot of great actors. And I mean, and Luke Evans I think he is just an amazing actor anyway. So that was one thing that I really, really enjoyed was seeing him in something else, because he's good. He's really good. He really puts a lot of life to it.
Okay. So, well, my final thoughts, and I really, really, really can't stress this enough, want people to seek out this film. Like most of the films that we discuss on Conversations in Horror, there are films that I know everyone has seen, and there are films that are more of the cult films where not everyone has seen. And because this movie did not make a lot of money at the box office, we're always hoping that it becomes a cult film, even though, we may never see a sequel, although it does deserve one. So, with that, I would like to thank my guest, Sonia, for joining me on this amazing adventure of discussing Dracula Untold. And for all you listeners out there, I would like for you to seek out this film. Also seek out some of our previous episodes. We have lots of them. And surprisingly, we've done more than our fair share of vampires already. Also, make sure to check us out on social media and other places out there, websites and everything. You can find us everywhere. Don't forget to check us out on YouTube and support what we do here. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today and have a pleasant day.
Thanks for having me on.
Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production, produced by Kevin L. Powers, executive produced by Kelly A. Inoka, and originally filmed via Zoom technology. Conversations in Horror is hosted by Kevin L. Powers and co-hosted by various horror film lovers and filmmakers. To learn more about Mr. Powers, please make sure to check out his Patreon page and other social media platforms. Conversations in Horror is copyright 2024 Broken Lighthouse Pictures production.